Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also the newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on FreightWaves.com/runningonIce. Today, we are joined once again by Royce Neubauer, the founder and CEO of SFL Companies. Welcome back to the show, Royce.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me again. Looking forward to the conversation.
I am kind of excited about today. It's not really a secret that I'm a sustainable girly. And so I like it to be, I like to talk about those things and see what we can do to actually kind of, improve things and make it so that way there will be more generations that can enjoy Earth, because it's kind of a cool place, if I can be so bold as to say.
I agree with you 100%.
So one of those things that is one of the major problems contributing to a lot of issues is food waste. It's a big concern in the produce supply chain. And since that's something that you guys specialize in, what kind of strategies or initiatives have you been involved in to really help minimize that waste as a result, minimize the waste throughout the supply chain?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have any specific initiatives because, every retailer, every wholesaler, they all have their own kind of rules and regulations under PACA that they need to follow. What we tend to do is educate our team. We've talked about this before, but on how do we make sure we're getting the product from point A to point B safely and in the condition that it's shipped at. For us, the most important part is that pre-ship inspection by our drivers and coaching our drivers up on what to look for. If they see any, wet boxes, any, leaning pallets, any product damage in the pre-ship process while the truck is being loaded, I feel we can reduce and eliminate 95% of any claims that would ever result, right? And if we're reducing claims, we're significantly reducing that food waste. As far as initiatives internally, when we do have a situation where there is a possible claim at the receiving end, our claims process, I think, is bar none one of the best in the industry. We attack the claim immediately and we get all the facts as quickly as possible. We want pictures, we want temp recorders, we want pulp temps, we want reefer downloads to make sure that if the product arrived cold or warm or whatever the issue is, what happened? And is the product safe to consume? And if it's found that it is safe to consume, but the retailer won't take it or the wholesaler won't receive it, we're finding ways to donate that product to make sure that it is going somewhere and is being consumed in a safe way. So we work with different food banks, work with different shelters in our markets that we're going to make sure that if the product is consumable but doesn't look perfect for a retailer to sell, we want to make sure that's donated and that, somebody is actually enjoying that food, because you and I both know that just because the strawberry came in at 38 degrees instead of 36 doesn't mean the strawberry is bad. It just means that that particular receiver won't take it. But in the end, I think if you know how to ship produce and food, and you educate your drivers and our operations support is monitoring that throughout transit, you're going to significantly reduce that food waste.
That's something that I didn't learn until I was actually doing something with Grace on Sirius XM, and so we had someone call. We were talking about food waste in the supply chain, and someone called in and was like, "Oh yeah, like I have this. Like I will just go to random food banks and be like, here's an entire truckload of stuff. Like the receiver won't take it. It's still perfectly fine. It's just outside their acceptable parameters." Which I appreciate that receiver having their set parameters, but if food is still good, then you don't want to waste an entire truckload of it and end up in a landfill where nobody can eat it, and people still go hungry, and also it's contributing to landfills ever growing problems.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more.
I did see something one time of someone, I want to say it was like corn or wheat. It was something that it wasn't really, and you couldn't really be donated to a food pantry, but they were able to find some farm and like drop it off on the farm. And because it was still safe for like animal consumption. It was just not, it wasn't acceptable by the receiver. And it's kind of hard to take. I think it was just like a load of like just whole wheat that they were like, well, we can't like take it to a food bank because they don't have the ways to process it. So that just ended up at a farm. And I was like, that's actually pretty genius because throw it out there and enough cows and pigs and animals will happily eat some wheat.
Yeah, we've had such situations like that as well. And you mentioned corn. We have had a situation or two with corn shipments that the market shifts. They bought too much, and we've had retailers say, there's nothing wrong with it. We just can't take it in. We can't receive it. We're not selling fast enough, and we're just going to eat the costs. Can you find a place to dump it? Instead of dumping it, we just found a farm, similar situation where they're able to feed it to their hogs or whatever, and it worked out. The food was actually consumed. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. See, that is the kind of creativity that I love, like talking to people about and hearing those stories because it's something that I would have never thought of until you're in that situation where you're like, oh, I need to find a place for this to go. I just that's why I love logistics is because you always have everyone's like, oh, not every day is the same. And you're like, yeah, it's not because some days I'm literally calling farmers asking if I just showed up with a truckload of corn, could you possibly do something with that?
100%. And that is the thing that either sucks you in or kicks you out of logistics is putting those puzzle pieces together every single day. You either thrive on it and love the creativity that you're able to provide, or you just want to check boxes, and that's not a box you're willing to check, and it's just too much wild west sometimes. But it is controlled, and if you know the industry and you understand what you're able to do and what you shouldn't be doing, the decisions are pretty simple. But it's easy for me to say that. I've been doing this for 23 years now. So in the beginning, I'm sure it wasn't, but it was the ups and downs and the roller coaster and the puzzle pieces that really drew me to logistics and supply chain. And I love it.
That is one of the things that I do love about it is the like, so we have this problem. What do we do? Those were always my favorite of like, so we're not exactly sure how to solve this. And I'm like, give me 5 minutes. I'll come up with some insane answer that's half a joke, but also if we could pull it off would be really cool.
Yeah, 100%.
Those are some of those favorite days where everybody's just coming up with like next like crazy ludicrous idea. And then you're like, wait, actually that could work.
It could work. It could work.
So one of the things that you guys do, because you guys offer managed transportation systems, you kind of help shippers like with efficiently loading and packaging trailers. Have you guys really had a lot of success when it comes to kind of, educating shippers on, hey, maybe you shouldn't put 700 million things of packaging around here because it makes it, you'll either dim out or it's too heavy or it's too light. Like, have you had a lot of success with like getting your shippers to have less horrible?
You 100%. I mean, as far as the packaging itself, we have no say, but as far as loading the truck, we definitely have a say. And that goes back to the preloading inspections that our drivers do and coaching the drivers out. Different commodities need to be loaded in different manners and they need different protection. So by understanding the commodity grouping and understand what can ship with it and how it needs to be loaded, it is vital to reducing food waste and claims, but also making sure that the truck isn't too heavy, that the axles are loaded correctly, product's not touching air chutes to protect air circulation through the trailer. A lot of people kind of stay away from food and produce because they don't understand how to load each commodity, but we feel that we're professionals in our craft and we study the commodities and we understand that, if you're loading clementines that are imported and, you're in a shipper and they've got 2 airbags on the side of the trailer, well, that's wrong. I need 10. And trying to educate our shipper into buying more airbags, it only costs $10 a piece, $15 a piece. It's cutting into their costs, but at the end of the day, it's protecting them against an entire load tipping over. So we have educated our shippers on making sure that certain commodities aren't loaded too far back in the trailer so the airflow will circulate properly. And it's just simple pictures at the loading side. And we'll tell our drivers, don't leave. They need to pull 2 pallets off or they need to figure it out because we're not going to risk a claim on this trailer because they're trying to stuff the trailer with too much product. but it's also, a collaboration. You've got to have a shipper that understands what they're loading as well. Some do, some don't. Sometimes you'll get a buyer that is buying too much of one commodity and they're trying to load it with something that it doesn't work with. Onions and apples can't be shipping together. The temperatures are way off. We've had those types of situations where they're like, well, just throw them on there. No, your apples are going to smell like onions and taste like onions. So we can't allow that. And we're doing this for your protection, Mr. Buyer. But it's a collaboration and just being understanding that they're trying to move as much product as they possibly can at the best rate. But in the end, we have to make sure that we're loading the same commodity groupings that can ship with each other based off temperature requirements and weight requirements. So we do monitor that. When we see shipments coming over, our team will analyze, what we're putting on the truck and make sure that it makes sense and that everybody's protected.
I really, really like that because you not only are you saying like you're advocating for your shippers and saying, well, I don't want you to have claims because that means that you're going to lose product and that means you're going to lose revenue. But you're also advocating for those drivers of like, hey, if they've loaded you incorrectly, like do not leave. Like just, kind of stand up for yourself and say, I can't leave until you fix this. And then eventually there will be a victory somewhere.
You have to, and if you're loading heavy commodities and the driver knows that his axle is going to be overweight or something of that matter, we want them to communicate that, because if they get 50 miles down the road and head to scale and they're overweight, now they're getting ticketed and they have to go back, or we have to send a new truck in to pull product off. It just becomes a disaster. So if you can catch it at the shipping side, you can eliminate a lot of issues along that path.
So kind of along that shipping side and, advocating for customers, what kind of steps have you guys taken to really maximize efficiency? Because produce, you can't really get stuck in a 10-hour traffic jam on I-95. Like that's not really a good move for it. So how have you guys really advocated for your shippers and carriers and said like, hey, this is how we're going to maximize efficiency. So we have less trucks on the road or like less trucks going unnecessary places. Every truck is loaded fully. And, ideally in a perfect world, we're not having any produce loss.
Yeah, we've worked with quite a few of our shippers and some of their buyers and some of their buying habits, and just consolidating shipments, consolidating picks. Um, Gosh, when I started, we were doing 5, 6 picks in California to fill out a truck. So if we're able to get a consolidator involved where they can maybe hit 2 or 3 of those sheds and get the product to one shipping point, we're able to get that driver on the road much quicker and make sure that all those commodity groupings are loaded correctly, but it's also eliminating the environmental footprint of that truck going up and down, you know, different towns in California, picking up product, and then trying to manage their logbook to make an on-time delivery, right? And with e-logs, I think it has forced a lot of shippers to make sure that those picks are consolidated, that drivers have the right amount of hours to pick up and deliver products safely. But it's just route optimization. It's working with your shippers. We have a retailer that does a lot of organics, which that's very spread out. And sometimes it's better if we look at a scenario where they're buying an organic item and it might be 20 cases, but it's taking us 400 miles out of route. That's going to add a lot of wasteful spend on their end, because just the cost to drive there, we're probably going to lose a day of the entire product being delivered. They may be better off just buying that from a wholesaler in that store's market, right? So just kind of educating them and talking through certain scenarios with them on, what they're buying, why they're buying it, and what it really does to us as far as transit time is concerned. And are we fully maximizing that trailer? Can we get more product on that you have on a different shipment that's going to the same receiver? We work with our shippers. We can tell with our technology if a trailer is going to be full or not. And if we see that there's space opportunity and we have another truck coming in that is only picking up a small amount of goods, we'll try to consolidate that with the shipper. Each of them have their own rules and regulations, so it's really difficult to do. If the entire ecosystem were more transparent, which I've been fighting for 20 something years now, it would be a much easier task. But as we all know, competing businesses don't like to share data with each other and information with each other. But we have had some shippers that, where we're picking up at one or two locations and it's two or three pallets for four or five different ship receivers, that we've consolidated those in almost an LTL opportunity because we know we can get the product picked up and delivered safely and in an on-time manner for their receivers. So we've had to manage those type of expectations, letting them know that, hey, we might be putting product A on with product B's retailer, but they're all going to get there on time. They're all going to get there safely, and they're not going to know whose product is A or B. We just know where it's loaded on the truck. Our driver knows exactly which pallets are for this shipper or that receiver, and we're able to consolidate 4 or 5 trucks into one. So just analyzing each shipment and analyzing each system that our shippers are providing to us give us that ability. They don't always accept it. Sometimes they say, nope, I want 4 separate trucks. Then we're sending 4 separate trucks. It would be nice if we could make that decision, but in the end, it is up to the retailer, and it's up to the wholesaler, the shipper, on what they're willing to share and what they want on each truck. And we kind of have to abide by those rules, but we do put in our 2 cents, and we try to be more efficient in the supply chain and maximize capacity as much as possible.
It's like that infamous, it's like the infamous conversation with your hairdresser. Like, they'll say, I don't think that's a great idea, but ultimately, like, I'll do what you want, but I don't recommend doing that. Like, anytime you're just going to go and get bangs, they're like, look, I mean, I'll do what you want, but I don't think that's a good look for you. And so it's like, I like that you guys take that into, like, you're like, yeah, okay, like, look, you're a customer, we'll do whatever you say, but it's not a very smart idea.
We're not going to tell them it's not smart, but at the end of the day, we are going to tell them, hey, this might be a different option that you're not considering. If we capitalize on this option, you're going to save X amount, and it's still going to get there on time. But in the end, it is up to them to make that final call. It is their product. They do own it. And we want to make sure that they're satisfied and their needs are satisfied.
It's that what you have planned is great. I'm just going to happen to bring up some alternatives. And if you happen to like those better,
then you're going to save X amount of dollars, typically.
So I guess everyone's all up in arms right now about autonomous technology. We are seeing quite a few autonomous truck manufacturers hit some road bumps, if you will. So I guess when it comes to and I mean, we've seen autonomous tractors in our agriculture for a while, like, from picking, harvesting, planting, spraying things. How do you kind of, in some time, because I think we're still some time away from autonomous vehicles really being a major component of the supply chain. How do you see autonomous technology kind of hanging out and being a part of the produce supply chain outside of, those tractors in the field?
Yeah, I think what they're proving in the field is amazing, right? You've got machines that can scan strawberries to tell you the optimal time to pick them, and apples the same way. As far as the trucking world is concerned, I do think we're a ways off. There's a lot that a driver does that they have control of that I think they're figuring out that it's a little difficult for a computer to do. But with AI technology, autonomous options are going to come, at some point in time in our lives. I just don't know if we're going to see it, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. When I look at how produce is loaded, the cost of the equipment for a trucking company to buy an autonomous truck, it prices them out of the market. How do they pay for that is the biggest question. Yeah, your driver cost may go down. Is the driver need different now? Do they need a CDL? I don't know. Those are questions that need to be answered. I think they should, because if something happens with that computer, then the driver needs to understand how to operate that vehicle. Where I would love to see it kind of turn is more AI driven, where we're looking at route optimization, trailer maximization, fuel consumption, running the reefer unit at the optimal time, loading, certain commodities at an optimal time so that the reefer unit isn't working as hard. I think AI around this can really help build more intelligent processes than what we have today. But as far as just full autonomous, man, that's something that's been kicked around for the last 15 years, I feel, and that code has yet to be cracked. When you have, you know, cars in Arizona slamming into people, I don't know how you put 80,000 pounds heading down the road and trust it. It's just, it is going to happen eventually. I just don't know how close we are to that yet.
I've also been trying to figure it out because we've seen some successful test runs of, dry goods shipments going 200 miles down a highway. And I love that. But I do think that if anything, like you mentioned, we're going to have a lot of those smaller wins of, reefer optimization and load optimization to really kind of enhance, because you got to start with the little stuff. You got to build that strong foundation before you can just go, bam, full autonomous. Like you have to yeah, you got to start small. So I really like that. I think one of the easiest things that I've seen, it is expensive. So it's, with great, I don't know. It's kind of up to a shipper if it's worth it. But I think one of the easier things I've seen is the autonomous yard jockeys. So instead of having to have a warehouse person go and pull trailers around, literally it's like a Roomba that will bring your trailers.
Yeah, it's a set route, right? It knows that map. It knows exactly what the traffic's going to be in that environment, which I don't know how you can map that in over the road trucking. We don't know what the 101 is going to look like today versus tomorrow, right? I-75 through the Midwest, with construction and the amount of traffic that's coming in and off of highways, man, that's difficult to manage. But I do agree with you with the yard jockey concept, like the Roomba. I think that's, like you said, small steps. Start small and then work your way out. And I think that's a great place to start.
I love that because also it frees up because, it's not exactly the easiest to staff a warehouse at the moment. So it frees up some of those people for that, they don't need to be out in the yard pulling a trailer when they could be loading a trailer or doing something inside the warehouse to make it more efficient. Because if I can just have something bring it, from that corner over there, have it, the thing drive it in a fence where there's not really a lot of traffic, the worst that will happen if it goes wrong is I will have a trailer run into a trailer.
Exactly.
And I can pretty easily fix a trailer on trailer crime, because the vehicle's not going fast enough to do a lot of damage. So maybe it's just like get out there with a paintbrush or like a hammer to like undo it a little bit.
And I do feel it'll hit the dry world first, probably small packages and things of that nature first, before it gets to produce and food, because it is a more hands-on process as far as loading and receiving, because the claim ratios are a little bit different. Um, Damages are a little bit different. People are consuming these goods versus, putting a shirt on or something that's just, a packaged good. So it is a little different world than some of the supply chain. I do feel that we will probably be impacted last when it comes to autonomous vehicles.
There's a lot about the cold chain that I'm very curious to see how it adapts into autonomous technology because there's just a lot of weird stuff that, you really need someone there to say, this is this temperature and this is what this looks like. So I don't know. I'm excited for the future of it. I do think it's a ways off, but, I love the conversations that are being had around it.
I couldn't agree more.
All right. So we have asked you quite a few questions on this show. We know where you stand on cereal. We know, if you could eat, we know that you love to eat steak. This one's going to be a fun one. If you could have a superpower related to the transportation industry, would you choose the ability to instantly teleport freight anywhere in the world or the power to make traffic lights green whenever you approach them?
That's just an interesting question. When it specifically relates to transportation and logistics and not me driving a car, I would pick teleportation.
I
Um,
feel like that would solve a lot of your
it would
problems on
solve
a
a lot
daily
of
basis.
problems. I think when you talk about food sustainability, um, that would greatly reduce that. Energy resource utilization greatly reduce that. So I think teleportation would be ideal for all commodities. But when it comes to just me actually physically driving, the green light thing would be ideal. I do get a bit of road rage, so it's a problem and an issue I've been working on for many years.
Haven't we all? I have a touch. We have a new intersection installed by my house that no one seems to understand. So that's a fun one for me all the day on the daily.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I can catch a green light, I'm ecstatic.
Going to be a good day when you catch the green lights. So if anyone wants to, see if you have that ability to instantly teleport freight or reach out about any other questions they have, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, please check us out at www.sflcompanies.com, and anybody can email me at royce@sflcompanies.com. I'm available to answer any questions and see if we can't fit your need.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. You can subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.